I'm going to make an apple pie. I'm going to tell you all about it, but first I'm going to go ahead and do the first step so that it can be cooking. Very simple apple pie, so tasty and so good. But the first thing is I've got 2 cups of diced apples, and I've got 2 tablespoons of water. I'm going to put this, I've got a saucepan over on the stove. I'm going to put them in there, put the apples, pour the water over, put a lid on it, and let it cook for about 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that step. I have to let the pan warm up before it actually starts cooking, but at least I've got that started. And while that step is going, you want to make sure that the water, because it's only 2 tablespoons of water, you don't want your apples to scorch, so kind of keep an eye on them. Usually putting a lid on them though, there's enough moisture in apples that it starts to come out, and usually you're fine, but just in case, especially if you do like I do, and sometimes you're in a hurry and you turn it up real high, so you just got to be careful about that. Now the pie that I'm sharing, I've actually shared in a video about 2 years ago, I guess. It's Aunt Mary Jo's apple pie, and it's in mine and Jim's book, Celebrating Southern Appalachian Food. It's on page 207. Very, very simple pie. I'm going to tell you the ingredients. The 2 cups of diced apples I've already put in, 2 tablespoons of water, 1 unbaked pie shell. You can make one, you can buy one. You can buy the ones that come in the little pie plates, or you can buy the Pillsbury or one of those that you roll out, or make your own. So 1 unbaked pie shell, 1/2 stick of butter, 3/4 cup sugar, 1 tablespoon all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon salt, and 1 egg slightly beaten. It's the easiest apple pie ever, and it really is good. So we've done placed our apples in the small sauce pot with 2 tablespoons of water. We're going to cook for 5 minutes with lid on, keeping an eye on it to make sure the apples don't scorch, as I said. And then we're going to pour those cooked apples with the liquid and everything into our pie, under our unbaked pie shell. Then we're going to melt the butter just in that same pot. And then once it's melted, we're going to remove it from the heat, and then we're going to stir everything else into it. So the sugar, the flour, cinnamon, salt, and egg. And then we're going to pour that mixture over the apples, and we're going to bake at 350 degree oven for 35 minutes or until golden brown. Your oven may be slightly different than mine, may bake faster or slower, so you just have to keep an eye on it. You can tell when the top edge of the pie crust gets brown, and then the apples turn, I'll show you, they turn like the apple mixture really turns like a golden brown, so you'll be able to tell. Anyway, it's really, really tasty. Now, I want to tell you, while the apples are cooking there, I'm going to talk a little bit about where I got the recipe. See how much time I've got left. I don't really hear the apples cooking yet. Or maybe I do. Maybe they are cooking. Anyway, Aunt Mary Jo, I said that was the name of the recipe. So she was actually Pap's Aunt Mary Jo. So she was my great Aunt Mary Jo. And she was Pap's mother, Marie, her sister. Now, in families in those days, sometimes today too, but very often back in those times, families were so large that those older siblings, eventually there was such an age difference between them and the ones that come last that some of the older siblings, their children, was about the same age as those that come last, in their family. And that's how it was with Mary Jo. She was more Pap's age than my Mama Marie, her sister's age. Because there was such a difference. She was one of the youngest ones in the family. So she was much more Pap's generation than Marie's. And she was actually the longest living out of that family. She lived the longest. She's now since passed away. But we learned how to make this pie. During my growing up years, Mary Jo would have the Elliott reunion. Mama Marie was an Elliott. And she would have that reunion at her house in Canton, North Carolina. And we didn't get to go every year because it was 2 hours away, and there was always something going on or something that needed to be done. But when we did go, there was always good food, just like, family reunions are noted for everywhere. And there goes my oven. And at some point, she started making this pie. I don't really remember when. I just remember that it was really good, and Granny just loved it too. And then when we found out, Granny, I was still little, running around playing, how easy it was, she got the recipe, of course, and then she come home and started making it too. And we just all called it Aunt Mary Jo's apple pie because it come from her. Of course, I'm positive she didn't develop the recipe or anything like that. I just have a bad habit, and I guess I got it from Granny, of any cake like that, we just associate any recipe like that, we associate it with the person that we learned it from. So while we learned it from Aunt Mary Jo, we've been making it all these years, and it's just become part of our family and one of our favorite recipes. I love it for a lot of reasons. Most of all, it's tasty, but also it's so easy. It's so easy to whip up. And, you know, I like apple pies when you think about the double crust. Miss Cindy taught me to make pies like that. I think she probably started blueberry. Me and her loved blueberries, so I think she started teaching me that one, and then told me, you know, you could just replace the blueberries with the apples or peaches or whatever it is that you want. So I really love those kind of pies too, but it seems like they're more labor intensive because of the top crust, and you got to get it just right. This one is so simple that because you just pour all the stuff in there. Now, it's not an apple pie when you think about that big layer full of apples, you know, stacked in there. It's not like that at all. Of course, I'll show you once it's done, but it's not like that at all. It's more of, it puts me in the mind of an apple tart or something like that. Anyway, really good. And just like I was saying, Miss Cindy said about interchanging, you could do that with other fruit. You could make this pie with peaches. I especially like it with blueberries. So you could do the same technique and just replace the fruit with something else. Let me check and see about my timer. It's almost about to go off, so let me check on my apples. Okay, apples are done. I'm gonna go ahead and pour them in there. Didn't have much liquid. It really depends on the type of apple that you have too, and I needed to use these apples. They were kind of getting old and they were a little bit drier, but anyway, there is moisture in there and it'll be fine. It'll be just fine. So now I'm going to put my butter and let it melt. Won't take it but a minute. So I wanted to keep talking about Mary Jo. You know, you may be thinking, well, why are you sharing this recipe again, Tipper? Well, there's two reasons. There's one reason is that it's in mine and Jim's cookbook, and I said that I would try to share all the recipes, and I've made a playlist, so I can link to that in the description below, so you can see all the recipes that I've shared so far. Some of them, Aunt Mary Jo's apple pie is probably already in there. Some of them are already in there because I could just go back and say, well, here's my cornbread recipe. When I shared it, I didn't have a cookbook, but I did share it, so I went ahead and added it. Anyway, so that's one of the reasons I want to highlight the wonderful recipes. But the other reason is, I guess I've just been thinking about not just Mary Jo, but about my Mama Marie, about all of her family, my papa's family too, just all of our family. And I suppose one of the reasons I've had them on my mind is maybe, you know, just as you get older, you think about those things more. But mostly the reason is Corey and Katie, you know, that they're going to have their first children. It's going to be my first grandchildren. And just all that, just thinking about the ties of family and all that just really brings up memories. And especially, you know, we're prayerful that Corey and Austin are going to get to buy my brother Steve's house. And they'll be right here. Of course, Katie still lives with me and Matt, so she'll be right here, at least for now. She may not end up here, but for now. And, you know, knowing that they're going to grow up, not just in the same places that their mother did, walking the same paths that their mother did, not even that their grandmother did, you know, me as a child. Corey and Katie, I really loved it when they were little and they played in the creek, because I had so many memories of playing in the Stamy Creek, you know. But anyway, not just, so they're little boys, Giblet and Gizzard as Matt calls them. It's not just going to be in the same places that their mothers walked or their grandmother, but even their great-grandfather, you know, thinking about Pap. But not just him, then it continues to go back to his parents, to Pap, Wade and Marie, who were my grandparents, you know. But even further than that, it goes back to Papa Wade's father, Benjamin, to Mary Jo. She lived here. So all those people, all those things, all those family ties really has been running around in my mind. Now I'm going to stop right there and check my butter. Let's see. It's pretty much, well, let's see if we can mix up. We can get me a fork. Let's see. Before I add the egg, because I've got my butter pretty hot, I'm going to try to cool it down by adding the other stuff, so I don't end up with scrambled eggs. Cinnamon makes it smell so good. Thinking about Pap, he would say, smell, smells good. Okay, maybe that cooled it off enough that I won't have scrambled eggs. And if I do, they won't hurt. They'll just blend in. So once you add the egg in, it's kind of like that's the texture of it. So it's really easy just to pour over your apples. Okay, now let me put the pie in. Put me another timer on. Okay, anyway, as I was saying, makes me think of those generations. So a lot of times when I talk about Appalachian culture, and you know, there's so many different ways of looking at it, whether you're talking about the language or the music or the folklore or the recipes or whatever it is, those traditions that are handed down. One reason, and every time I say this, somebody has to correct me and say that, you know, it's not that there's outliers. In other words, there's people in Appalachia who did none of the stuff those things I mentioned don't have anything to do with it, and then there's people in other places of the country that do the same exact thing. So Appalachia doesn't hold all that. I understand both those things are true, but I do also believe that for a large population, there's a large culture, or it would be gone, has hung on in Appalachia, whether it's the words, the music, the foods, whatever it is, the folklore, is because so many people for generations stayed in the same general area. Now, that also happens in other parts of the world, of course. So anywhere there's a rich culture like that, if there's people that have stayed there. So for my family, for example, right here immediately in Wilson Holler there, I've just named to you, there's like the generation of Benjamin Wilson, of Wade Wilson, of Jerry Wilson, of Tipper was Wilson, of Corey Wilson, or Corey Presley, sorry, now that I'm not a Wilson, Corey Presley, and then will be, you know, her little boy. So that's right here in this one localized area. Now when I expand that to all of western North Carolina, Benjamin's family come from Madison County, so then there was probably 2 or 3 generations there. Before that, maybe they were in Buncombe County. You know, it's just still in that same geographic area, even though it's not as small as Wilson Holler. It's still that same kind of area where the people were using the same words, they were singing the songs, they were eating the leather breeches or whatever it may be. So fascinating to think about. And for me, but I think too also for many people who lived in the Appalachian Mountains for those generations, that really tied into their sense of place. I've talked about that in videos before, where sense of place is a real thing, and I'll just link to the video and you can go watch it. There's many different reasons why I believe that, where I've really dug in and talked about it, but definitely those families, that longevity of family is part of it. You know, even like me, you know, getting teary-eyed about it, thinking about me, you know, playing in the creek and Corey and Katie playing in it, and now their children's going to grow up to play in it. But also, to take it back to Mary Jo, for her, you know, because she did live here, there was a house further up the creek that she lived in that burnt down. There was one down the road a piece. It also burnt down. Houses in those days often burnt down because of their fire situation and trying to cook and things like that. Sad for both of them. Pap was alive, had got out of the Marines, so he was older when the one down the road burnt down. He lost his Marine uniform and those things like that. Anyway, and Mary Jo's told me before in the past that she still, even though she had left home and was no longer living there, she had pictures and stuff that was there, and she lost all of them. But when I think about, like, we love to walk up the creek and go in the woods, and I often think about my family who walked those same trails. And, Mary Jo's one of them. I will think of her. There was others. There was Francis, there was Frank, there was Wayne, other ones. But definitely, I don't know why Mary Jo often comes to mind. So as I focus, though, on Mary Jo, or on the Wilsons, when I was talking about the generations, the same applies, though, for the other side of Pap's family. So it's really interesting, this little tidbit I'll share with you. So Pap's father was a Wilson, so I kind of talked about them, and Wade was his father. Benjamin was his grandfather, was Wade's father. And then on his mother's side, she was an Elliott, and her mother, though, was a Coleman. So then you had Carrie Coleman, had Marie Elliott, who married Wade Wilson, and had Jerry Wilson. Interestingly, so Marie's mother, Carrie, that I said, who was a Coleman, she was an Elliott after she married, and her husband, Jewel, he got killed. He was murdered. After he murdered, she still was murdered. He had all these, she still had her little kids. Well, then over in Graham County, Benjamin Wilson was living there, and he had kids, was married to, Dora was her name, Dory is what they called her. And she died. She got sick and died just after she'd had a child. And so he had all those children. Well, then, of course, years went by, years later, as they were raising their kids and all that. But then Mamaw Wilson, Marie, and Papaw Wade, they met each other. And maybe they were, late teens or whatever it was. But because of that, then Benjamin and Carrie met each other. They were both, widow and widower. And then they ended up getting married. So this rather strange thing, I know. And because Papaw and Mamaw were older, there were still little ones at home. So like Mary Jo and Francis. Francis was one of Mary Jo's sisters, a very sweet lady too. She's no longer with us. Anyway, so that's like an interesting tidbit that they ended up joining their families there. No relation. They never had any kids together. They were both older, and their kids were not blood related at all or anything like that, but just interesting that their families united together. And I know for Pap, that really made a impact on his life, because he got to grow up right with them. Some of the older ones that had moved off in both the Wilson and the Elliott family had moved off. They were not here all the time during those years. But Pap was definitely, and he grew up right with those grandparents, and they really impressed a lot on him. In the same way that I'm so thankful that Corey and Katie got to grow up near Pap and Granny and have that influence. And I pray the good Lord lets me and Matt live so that we can be an influence on our grandchildren. But since I always I end up focusing a lot on the Wilsons and a lot on the Jenkins, Granny's family, I thought I wanted to, so I make a big loud noise and a big mess. I wanted to share with you a little bit about the Colemans. So this book, I would encourage you wherever you live to check out your local historical society. Maybe if you have a museum. This one was produced by the museum in Cherokee County. We have a museum, so it was produced by them. It's just the heritage of Cherokee County, County of Cherokee, North Carolina. And often they do these, though. I know there's like Swain County. I have a copy of one of the ones from Swain County so often. And you can see here all the little pages I've got holding places. And because the pages I'm holding there are, of course, people in my family that I'm close to. So I want to show you, I want to read to you, go back to and I'll show you some of these pictures too. I'll put them on the screen. But thinking about the Coleman family. So right here this is Carrie Wilson. Carrie, there's my grandmother Carrie. And then Jeannie McClure, Frank Coleman, and George Coleman. They were all brothers and sisters there. Now the part I wanted to read to you, though, is the Coleman family history. And I also have this just in the last, it was before Pap died, so it's probably been 8 years now, 8 or 9 years. One of my cousins from this Coleman side of the family shared a photo with me that they'd come across, and it was a photo of all these. I'll put it on the screen so you can see it. I don't know who all the people are, but you can see the names of the ones. And remember, my grandmother is Carrie, so you can see that. She was a small little girl, but I can't remember exactly where they come across it, or somebody that was into genealogy shared it. One of the family members who knew all the details. Just a beautiful picture. I just felt like I had won the lottery when they shared it with me. I just loved it. I just examined Carrie's face and tried to see if she looked who she looked like. I can remember her barely. I can barely remember her, and when I did, my memories of her, she was bedridden. Or not really bedridden. She could get up, but she spent a lot of time in the bed. But I looked at her and I immediately thought that her brow and her eyes looked like Katie. I always think of Katie right through here. Looks like Pap, looks like my daddy and me, and little pictures of me when I'm little. Anyway, so I immediately thought that, but I was just amazed by the family, seeing them all together. But this is the Coleman family history. So Sarah Isabel Farmer, born 1855, married Eliza Milton Coleman, born 1852. They had 11 children and 86 grandchildren. Sarah died December 12, 1904, and Eliza died July 5, 1932. Their children are as follows. So think about all these children. Dora Coleman, born July 4th, 1873, married John Carroll. That was her first husband, John Carroll. Andy Moore was her second. She had 4 children. Joe Coleman, born May 28, 1876, married Martha Roberts. They had 9 children. Ella and Ollie, twins. There's twins in that family. Neat that I had them too. Born July 5th, 1877, Ella Coleman married Marion Green. They had 9 children. Ollie Coleman married John Roberts, and they had 14 children. Joe's wife Martha and Ollie's husband were sister and brother. George Coleman, born 28, 1881, married Ora Dockery, and they had 9 children. Frank Coleman, born June 16, 1884, married Belle Letford first, and they had 4 children. Married Dorothy Grace, and they had 5 children. That particular family is very, very close to ours, very close. William Absalom Coleman, born October 9, 1886, married May Letford. They had 6 children. Belle Letford and May Letford were sisters. Jenny Coleman, born February 13, 1889, married Zed McClure, and they had 11 children. Zed McClure taught singing schools in 3 counties in North Carolina and in North Georgia. Really rich musical family the Coleman side was too, not just the Wilsons. In fact, maybe that's even where the influence come to the Wilsons after Mama and Papa were married. But Carrie, my grandmother, she played the piano. She played the piano by ear, my great-grandmother. So then the next child it tells is her, Carrie Coleman, born January 21st, 1891, married Julius Elliott first. That's the one that died, that got killed. And they had 10 children. Second marriage, Ben Wilson. Then Fred Coleman, born May 17, 1895, married Lenny Mae Lunsford. They had 2 children. And Sarah Coleman, born February 15, 1900, married George Birchfield. They had 3 children. So just reading over the children of Sarah and Eliza, you can see that big difference in ages from the first one being born in, let's see. No, right here, I'm skipping it. Dora, born July 4th, 1873, and then they were still having kids. Sarah was born 1900, February 15th, 1900, so you can see that big, giant gap there, and that's why so often, like Pap and Mary Jo being more the same age, that also happened in Carrie's family. So, unless you're, maybe all that doesn't mean anything to you, but I guess I'm trying to use it as an example of the feelings that I'm feeling. So there was Carrie, born in 1891, and I can barely remember her. She died, I guess, in the 70s. In the 70s, because that's why I can barely remember her. And so she was still living, though, but she walked, she walked these same paths that I do. She walked up the creek. They lived up the creek, Just so precious for me to think about that. The great sense of place that I feel for the mountains of Appalachia, but especially for my little Wilson holler here, knowing that from her generation to my future grandson's generations, walking and living in the same place. There's just something really powerful about that. And maybe that's because I'm sentimental. Maybe that's because I'm just obsessed with thinking about Appalachia in the sense of place. I'm not sure. But it's really a powerful feeling for me, and I'm really, really thankful for it. I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about this and my thoughts about it, and why I wanted to get up and make Aunt Mary Jo's apple pie, why she was on my mind, and by extension, not just her, but the Wilsons and the Elliots and the Colemans and all of them swirling around in my mind. I'm going to clean up my mess, and then the pie's still got about 14 minutes, and then maybe I can convince Katie to try a piece with me. Got the pie out and let it cool just a little bit. I never do good on my pie shells. You can see that they kind of sunk down. I didn't adhere them good enough to the edge. Didn't have them rolled out good enough, so it kind of sunk down inside the pie, but it'll still be really good. I always worry more about how things taste than how they look. I've got me and Katie some milk. I've got us a little saucer. I'm going to entice her to come and eat a piece with me. Probably still should let it cool just a little bit, but I'm not going to. We're going to try it, Katie. I can't wait no longer.
I can't wait either. I'm coming.
No. Let's see. Looks good. Oh. Ooh, I'm just dropping mine all over the place. It'll still be okay. It'll still taste good.
So whose recipe is this? You said
This
Carrie's?
is Mary Jo's.
No, it's Mary Jo's.
Yeah.
Oh,
Katie sure can't remember Carrie, but she can remember Mary Jo. Very good.
I loved Mary Jo.
Yeah.
That woman was precious. Ooh. That's good.
It's so good to be so easy.
Wonder where Mary Jo come up with this.
I don't know. I wish I'd asked her. Maybe she learned it, since we learned it at a family reunion from her, maybe she learned it at church or somewhere like that.
Maybe so. I bet you Mary Jo was a good cook.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I ever had any privilege to eat any of her cooking, but I bet she was a good
Maybe
cook.
at the Coleman reunion.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm. This is really good.
Yeah, it is.
I haven't made one in a while. When you don't make a recipe that you really like in a while, and then you make it, you're like, why don't I make this all the time?
I know. It's really good now that I've tasted this. I remember having it at just different times. Because it has a distinct...
That cinnamony.
It's different than just other apple pie. There's something special about it. That's why I remember it.
It's not like it's different, like you're saying, the texture and everything. Softer and creamier, and I don't know. Not as many apples.
It's less like a cobbler than like what people think when you think of like really heavily breaded, like
fruit, yeah.
almost syrupy. It's not got that texture because these apples are kind of retained some of their shape. They're kind of whole, but really soft.
They're so good. So good.
There's a recipe, a different one if you want a different take on apple pie.
I will tell you, well, two funny things about the recipe. Since I had shared the recipe before, I thought, well, I wonder how long that's been. Should I do another video even though I've got this on my mind? And I went back and looked and was watching the beginning of it. I accidentally said in that video 3 cups of sugar instead of 3/4 cup, but I did put it on the screen, no, so that's funny. That was my mistake.
I don't think you could do more.
As a creator, video person that does videos all the time, I hate that when I think I've said everything right and then I'm watching it back and it's to like edit and it's so obvious that I said the wrong thing. So frustrating. It's just my fault though. Anyway, the other thing is, one time we were going to where I was saying that Katie might have ate some of Mary Jo's food, was at the Coleman reunion, not at the Ellery reunion that she has at her house or had at her house for years. The Coleman reunion every year is held here over at Marks Creek Community Center. And shame on us, we don't always go. We should. But one time we were going, and was trying to hurry up and cook whatever it was I was going to cook, I think before church, trying to get it all ready because it's on a Sunday. And I made this pie. I thought, well, I'll make the pie, Mary Jo. And got there, and it's just, tremendous amounts of food, just crazy.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. So of course though, I wanted to get a piece of my own pie, and I got it, and I took one bite, and I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? It was so salty. I still have no clue what I did. It was inedible. You couldn't eat it.
Did you pick it up off that table?
Well, what was left, but part of it was already gone. And then I was like, oh my gosh, whoever, I don't know, there's lots of people here, whoever's eating that, I hope they don't know.
Sorry.
Hope they don't know that I made it. Anyway, yeah, I don't know what I did wrong. Just in my hurry, I put in too much salt. That's the only thing I could have done.
It happens.
I even wondered, like, did I get my salt and my sugar mixed up, which seems an impossibility, but did I put that much salt? It was totally inedible. Anyway.
Poor Mom, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, that's a long time ago, years ago. Sometimes that happens, though, when you cook. Always stuff like the sinking pie crust happens to me, but I don't care. If it tastes good, I don't care as much about what it looks like. But always things go awry. I will tell you, too, while Katie's here, we're drinking out of, these are snuff jars. Snuff come in them, had a little metal lid on them. Maybe you've seen them if you didn't have anybody in your family that dipped snuff. Maybe you've seen them in antique stores or thrift stores or anything like that. They make the perfect little glass.
Oh, they do.
Because they're real thick glass, or they're real sturdy.
They are actually really thick.
But now and I didn't plan this, I promise, just when I was going to pour me and Katie some milk, I happened to see one of them in the cabinet because we drink out of them all the time. And then I thought, how perfect. I've got to tell the story of the snuff jars. So these could have been Carrie's. They could have been hers. I'm not sure because I've had so many over the years, but these could have been hers.
Very well could have been.
She did dip snuff. A lot of older ladies in my area, my Granny Jenkins dipped snuff too. So this is what they would have bought them in. Well, one of the things we love to do as a family, and we haven't done this in a long time, we need to do it, but we love to go dig in dumps. So in the old days, there was no trash dump, not even a landfill, anything like that, and people, they tried to reuse everything they could, but things they just couldn't use, they just dumped them. They had a family dump out in the woods somewhere, a certain place where they dumped stuff. Maybe it was broke jars or whatever it was. Anyway, and we love to find those places and dig in them because oftentimes what you find is rusted beyond even telling what it is.
Yeah.
Still exciting to find though, and a lot of times the glass jars will be broke, hence that's probably why they threw them away.
Yeah.
But sometimes you find things that are not broke. So this was, Corey and Katie was probably, what was you like in maybe 5th grade or 6th grade or something? Back when they done that logging up there. So how long has that been?
4th grade. That's almost 20 years ago.
Yeah,
That's
a long
right
time
up
ago.
20
Anyway,
years ago.
they'd done a bunch of logging up the creek, and so we were up there doing whatever we do, out and about, enjoying the day, and me and Matt and Corey and Katie, and I think we took a picnic or whatever. But somehow we noticed, if you ever notice something laying on top of the ground, then you start digging.
See if there's more.
See if there's more. Well, there was an old family dump up there that was close enough that I know it was my family's. Probably most of the ones up there are, but especially this one. Anyway, and we're digging around, raking back leaves, and then I find like the snuff jars, maybe not these though, but ones like this, if not these, there was 6 sitting right together.
Really?
And you've heard this story before.
I just
forgot.
literally can't remember.
And it was just like somebody had set them down there. Well, I knew they were probably big grandma's, Carrie's. And I suppose they were set down in a bag, a paper bag, or a box. And over the years, that deteriorated and just left the jars. So, anyway, could be. Very fitting, though, if they are hers, or even if they're not, just the memory of the ones. Of course, we brought those home, and I washed them up and put them in the cabinet. And over the years, though, I've got them from different places. And unfortunately, some of them do get broke over the years.
Now, what I do remember about that particular part of the trash dump is, and this is how I know we must have been really little, is once y'all discovered it was there, you told us to wait on the other side of the creek and not to go over there because of the broken glass. You didn't want us digging in the broken glass. So I remember always knowing it was there, but we would always just wait and see what you would come up with, and you'd kind of show us, we got this, we got that, and then we'd help you carry it home. But when they did the logging, they pushed where they kind of moved the land and did it totally covered that whole entire place up with logs. Now it's kind of settled. You might be able to go back.
Do you believe that the creek just down from that, like if you go out through here and off the other side of the ridge down there, and then you either go that way or that way. Well, if you go that way, the creek's just right there.
Right, it is just right.
Do you believe that I can remember when I was little that there was logs across that creek? There was a remnant of I guess that was the bridge. No, like 2 or 3.
Oh, like legit.
Yeah. When I was really little, I can remember that. Now they were rotted and green and mossy, and there wasn't all there, but there was 1 or 2.
Wow. That's because they drove across that.
Yeah.
There was cars up there.
Right.
Me and Corey have a video about that somewhere, metal detecting, and what you almost always find up here when you metal detect, car parts. Yeah, any sort of scrap, random car parts. Yeah. Which is fun to think that would have also been some of this same bunch. Mary Jo's brothers.
Her brothers, her
I did actually find
her stepfather, Benjamin,
this was like years ago, I took it to Pap and asked him. I dug up, I was in the creek, and that happens because it all just kind of falls into the creek, or they drove across the creek, and I saw a piece of metal sticking up, and I got in there and started digging around, and I pulled it out, and I looked, and I said, this is a hood ornament off of a car. This is the only thing it could be. So I took it to Pap, and I said, what is this? What did this belong to? And he said it was the hood ornament off a Plymouth, and Frank was the only one that drove a Plymouth up there, is what he said.
So it was.
It was Frank.
Would have been Pap's uncle, my great uncle Frank, and Mary Jo's brother.
Mary Jo's brothers. Yeah. And it just happened to be there, and I just happened to be there at the right time. Yeah. So it's fun to think about. These jars could have been. I guess Carrie would have been his mama.
Yeah.
These jars could have been his mama's, and all the stuff that we found from them, which you remember him. Of course, I don't remember
him very well. Yeah.
I don't remember any of them. I remember Mary Jo, but that's one of the only ones that was still around when me and Corey came to
Frank. Very, very interesting man.
I thought he was really nice.
He was very nice, but he had some troubles. But he was something else. He really was. Run from the law a few times. He was something else.
Poor Frank. Well,
but he also bought all the doorknobs in Granny and Pap's house, and when they got married, when we first moved in,
being nice,
he paid for all of them. Yeah,
well, that's nice of him. Well, this is cool. This makes me think about all of those people. I have to be careful. I'll do the little teary-eyed stuff. Yeah. But the last time I saw Mary Jo was at one of those reunions, and good Lord, I'm not lying. It had to be, I don't know how many years ago. And she was just a little bitty. She was just a little bitty lady, and she come up to me, and it's not like I ever spent a whole lot of time around her, but she really liked Pap, and she really knew y'all. And she said, I just really love you. To do the crying stuff. And if I never see you again, you just remember. And give me this big hug and made this whole, if I never see you again. And I told her, I said, I'll see you again. And I never did. Mm-hmm. And when I found out she passed away, even though I wasn't super close with her, it really hurt my feelings. It made me think, well, daggone, I should have went and seen her. But that's just how nice she was. She was so sweet and so precious and so caring to really seek me out. This little kid seek me out and say, I'm really proud of you. And that just stuck with me. She was a sweet lady. She really was. A little bitty thing.
She really was, and she'd be happy that we were eating her pie.
Oh, she would. She'd be tickled.
And I think she'd be tickled to know the future of her family's continuing here in Wilson Holler.
I think she would be.
As always, we're glad you stopped by to help us celebrate Appalachia today.
Oh, Lord, sorry.
Me too. That's why I have to, I gotta go, or I'm gonna start crying too. That's one of them things that really just stuff that bothers you, and that just bothered me. Oh, I know.
Because I loved her.
I'm ashamed that I didn't go see her. I'm ashamed I didn't spend more time with Granny Gazzy.
Well, but not even that, because she's so loving. She would understand. She'd say, "Honey, you're busy," and
she would.
And I wasn't, like I said, it's not like I was real close with her, but it was just when somebody looks at you and talks at you like that, it just rubbed me, It didn't rub me wrong. I just remember her just
impressed upon you.
And I never forgot it. Yeah. And I never forgot her face looking at me, telling me that. And I was little. I was a lot younger than I am now. Mm-hmm. Sweet Mary Jo.
Well, she lived to be in her 90s.
She did, yeah. She's a good somebody. Mm-hmm. Proud to call her kin. And this is a good recipe of hers. Good for her. She did a whole lot for her family. She sure did. This is important. This stuff that we do keeps it alive. It keeps her alive, and what she did, it keeps Carrie, it keeps all of them. Mm-hmm. That's why you need to do this stuff, to preserve the memories and history and effects that these people who are long gone had on our lives, everybody else's life. It's just, I want somebody to be talking about me when I'm gone.
Yeah.
And doing something, you know, well, Katie did this, and this was a good idea, so, or Katie made this, or whatever. Of course, I'll have to make some more recipes. If anybody's going to be cooking something I made.
You're right, sister.
So.
Well said. Matt, you want a piece of pie?
It's really good.
Apple pie.
Yeah. He's like, do you even have to ask me? I'll be back.
I didn't even hear him come back.
No, I didn't. He snuck in.
I thought he was still gone.
I've always really liked these jars because of how actually, I mean, legit, they're thick.
Yeah.
And they're substantial, and if you get going too fast washing dishes like I do and get in a hurry, these will be the last ones you break.
Yeah.
Because of how thick they are.
They're
and they have those different patterns, like mine is slick on the bottom.
Yeah. And then these
yours has that ring.
These go this way, and those are more like
these
little,
are scalloped.
Yeah.
That's like lines all the way to the bottom. You do see these at antique shops all over the place.
Yeah, you do. Most people, I don't think, know what they are.
Sometimes you, like, up the creek, we would find them with the lids still on.
Yeah.
Those tin lids. I think there's one or two in the basement that do still have tin lids on them.
Down there in our collection there is. Ooh, I'm just making a mess with your daddy's too.
Hey, it's okay.
It'll still taste good.
I just think it's neat to think that that somebody else had this.
Oh yeah, where they bought it.
Where they bought it.
Did they buy it at clearances? Did they buy it at somewhere in town, or at that store over there where all the daffodils are blooming? That Pat told me was a store. Did they buy it there?
It's just neat to think, and in the use, it was a different, significant use for somebody else. And then did it sit in the barn for a long time when it was empty?
Yeah.
But they would have kept these to drink out of, but they'd have kept them to do all kinds of stuff with.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'd have been of use to them.
Here's you some pie.
You want to get some more milk?
I'll go get it. Well, me and Katie drank it all here.
See if we can find you a snuff jar too, since we've made a big deal about it. Let's see here.